My name is Adam. I've always thought of myself as a pretty rational guy, maybe a little reserved, a little quiet, but the kind of person people trust not to jump to conclusions. I never expected the first real crack in my marriage to appear in a place as surreal as the Skyroom Club under the glare of LED lights and the thump of over-engineered bass. I'd come here tonight just to make a little cash as a fill-in sound tech. The job landed in my lap last minute from a mutual friend, Greg, who couldn't have known, my wife would be here. From the moment I stepped out of the elevator, I felt like a stranger in my own city. Everyone was dressed up, laughing too loudly, pretending to be more relaxed than they actually were. And there, in the middle of it all, was Lily. She stood near the bar, leaning in close to her company's director, a guy I'd only seen once, in a blurry LinkedIn profile photo she'd shown me when she got the job. They both wore these matching gold VIP wristbands, the kind of thing that made them stand out even among her colleagues. I'd been watching people file in all night and barely a handful of those bands were handed out. I found myself wondering, since when did Lily rate the gold treatment? She wasn't even part of the executive team. I watched as the director, tall, confident, with that permanent half-smirk some people never lose, leaned in closer. He said something that made Lily laugh, but the sound didn't reach her eyes. And then, as if it was the most natural thing in the world, he slipped his arm around her shoulders. It wasn't some quick side hug or a joke for the crowd. It was a slow, familiar move, one that said, "We've done this before." I felt a jolt go through me, like the ground wasn't quite as stable as I'd always believed. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. The image was burned into my mind. Lily, my wife, her body language a mix of flattered and anxious, her smile just a little too forced, her eyes flicking around as if she was making sure no one was watching too closely. But I was watching. At first, I told myself I was being dramatic. This was just a party. People loosen up, especially after a couple of drinks. Maybe I'd misread the whole thing. Maybe I was tired from hauling cables and fighting with the mixer all night. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind wouldn't let go. When you've been with someone as long as I've been with Lily, you start to notice the small changes, the way she stands, the tilt of her head, the way her hands fidget with her glass. But this was different. This was a performance, and I was supposed to be the only one who didn't know I was in the audience. A minute later, Lily spotted me. Our eyes met, and I saw something flicker across her face, a moment of panic quickly masked by a wide smile. She said something to the director, who nodded without even looking at me. Then she made her way across the room, picking up a glass of champagne as she walked, like she needed something to do with her hands. She reached me faster than I expected, her movements just a bit too hurried. "Oh my God, Adam," she said, pitching her voice loud enough for anyone nearby to overhear. "What are you doing here? I didn't know you were working tonight." I shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Greg called in a favor. Guess he didn't realize this was your big night." She laughed, and for a split second it sounded almost real. Then she leaned in, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "That was the director back there. He was just showing me the new event space, for the annual fundraiser. Don't look so serious. It's all work stuff." She tossed her hair over her shoulder and gave me a look, half amused, half daring me to question her. "Seriously, Adam, don't start with the suspicious husband routine. You can trust me." Something about the way she said it, the way her eyes darted back to the VIP section, made my skin crawl. I tried to respond, but the words caught in my throat. I remembered every time she'd brushed off my concerns in the past few months, the sudden late nights, the new clothes, the constant notifications on her phone she always answered in another room. Now here we were, surrounded by people, music, and all the glittering distractions money could buy, but there was this invisible wall between us. I tried to find a crack in her armor, something that would tell me I was overreacting. But all I saw was the same careful, defensive energy I'd been noticing at home. She squeezed my arm, lowering her voice even further. "Come on. Don't make a scene, okay? This is just a work thing." He likes to joke around with everyone. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the forced calm in her smile. I looked back toward the director, who was already talking to someone else, completely unconcerned. As if nothing happened. As if he could put his arm around my wife in public and expect no consequences. I felt something break inside me, not anger, exactly, but a sharp, aching uncertainty. Was I seeing things that weren't there, or had I just witnessed the moment my marriage started to slip away? I tried to laugh it off, but my voice sounded hollow. "You seem pretty close with him. New best friend." She rolled her eyes, but she was still gripping my arm. "You're impossible, you know that? If you're going to be jealous every time I talk to someone at work, this is going to get old fast." For a split second, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe I was just being paranoid. But every instinct in my body told me that something had shifted. I wasn't imagining the nervous glances, the barely disguised relief when someone interrupted us to ask about a technical issue at the bar. "Look, Adam," she said, suddenly impatient, "I'm here for work. Can you please just trust me for once?" I watched her face, looking for any sign of the woman I used to know. There was nothing but practiced indifference, a mask that was starting to slip. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't follow her back to the VIP area. I just stood there, feeling like a stranger in my own marriage. I kept telling myself it was nothing, that I was overreacting. But even as I went back to work, checking levels and pretending not to notice the way she kept glancing over her shoulder, I knew the truth. Something fundamental had changed, and there was no pretending it hadn't. By the end of the night, I was exhausted, not just physically, but mentally. I packed up my gear, avoided Lily's eyes, and tried to convince myself that everything would look different in the morning. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't. Back home, the city lights still echoing in my mind, I lay on our bed staring at the ceiling while Lily showered. All I could see were her and the director, those matching wristbands, the way her smile faltered when she saw me. It should have been easy to brush off, just another awkward work party, right? But the more I replayed it, the more a heavy, cold certainty started to settle in my chest. For the first time, I couldn't convince myself it was nothing. I started thinking back over the past few months, trying to pinpoint where things began to shift. It wasn't just tonight, this had been building for a while. Little things, like background static, had started to pile up until they became impossible to ignore. First, there were the late nights. Lily had always been ambitious, but lately she seemed almost obsessed with work, coming home hours after she used to, often without a solid explanation. At first, I believed her when she said it was just crunch time at the office. But crunch time never seemed to end. There were always meetings, networking events, urgent projects that couldn't wait. She'd slip in quietly after midnight, sometimes pretending I was already asleep, sometimes acting like everything was normal. Then there was the wardrobe shift. Out of nowhere, Lily traded her usual jeans and sweaters for sharp business dresses, tailored suits, heels that probably cost more than my laptop. She said it was about the office dress code. You know how it is, Adam, the higher-ups noticed that stuff, but her new style was more than just professional. It was attention-grabbing. Every week, new clothes arrived, tags still on, receipts buried at the bottom of the trash. She used to love sharing her life with me. Now, she'd brush off questions about her day with a vague, just the usual, or she'd retreat behind her phone. Speaking of which, her phone was practically glued to her hand these days. She used to leave it charging in the kitchen at night. Now, it was always face down beside her, silent, the screen lighting up with notifications she'd glance at and ignore or swipe away the moment I came near. Sometimes I'd notice her texting furiously and then going quiet as soon as I entered the room. If I asked who she was talking to, she'd say just work stuff or a group chat with the girls. But the laughter I'd hear from behind the door wasn't the way she laughed with her friends. It was softer, secretive. There were other things too. Gifts started appearing, little boxes on the kitchen table, bags with the logo from some expensive store. Lily would shrug, claiming they were company giveaways or thank you gifts for the project. A watch, perfume, even a pair of concert tickets to a band I knew neither of us liked. The explanations never quite fit, but every time I tried to dig deeper, she'd shut down or get annoyed, flipping the conversation back on me. Why was I so suspicious? Didn't I trust her? The *Macy between us faded, replaced by a cold sort of politeness. She stopped volunteering her plans. No more, hey, let's grab dinner Friday, or do you want to go hiking this weekend? Instead, I'd find out last minute that she had another work dinner, or she was meeting a friend. If I asked to tag along, she'd insist it was boring, that I wouldn't have fun, that it was just colleagues. There was always a reason for me not to be there. The weirdest part was how easily she acted, tired, exhausted, too worn out for real conversation. Most nights, she just claimed she was wiped out, brush her teeth in silence, and disappear beneath the sheets before I could even say goodnight. I'd lie there listening to her even breathing and wonder if she was really asleep or just pretending. The weekends, which used to be ours, got stranger too. She started booking quick meetings or coffee catch-ups on Saturday mornings, saying she needed to network. Sometimes she'd come home with stories about her colleagues' personal drama, just vague enough to avoid specifics, just detailed enough to sound rehearsed. I realized that even the names and details seemed to change from week to week. I remember once, a couple months back, she came home late with a bag from a luxury boutique. Won a raffle at work, she said, smiling, but wouldn't tell me what the prize was. I pressed her jokingly and she snapped at me sharp, almost panicked, then immediately apologized. That was new. That wasn't Lily. It wasn't just me who noticed the change. Our friends started asking where Lily was, why she missed game nights or bailed on double dates at the last minute. I always covered for her, she's just busy, works a grind right now, but it started to feel like I was lying for both of us. Sometimes at night, I'd lie awake and tell myself it was just the stress of her new job, that I was being insecure. But my gut kept telling me otherwise. People say your intuition knows before your brain catches up. I wanted so badly to trust her. But when you start keeping score of all the strange new habits, all the little dodges and disappearances, the balance tips in a way that's impossible to ignore. So, as I stared at the ceiling that night, listening to Lily move around in the bathroom, I realized I wasn't just reacting to a single awkward moment at a party. I was reacting to months of quiet, creeping doubt, the slow, almost invisible corrosion of trust. I wanted to ask her about the wristbands, about the director, about the look in her eyes when she saw me. But I already knew what she'd say. She'd flip it back on me, make me feel like I was the crazy one, the jealous husband inventing problems. But I wasn't. I could feel it in my bones, something was happening behind my back. And for the first time I was ready to admit it. It's one thing to have suspicions. It's another to stumble onto proof you can't ignore, the kind of evidence that ends all debate. For a while, I honestly thought I'd never find anything solid, just a trail of off feelings, half-truths, and late-night doubts. But the universe has a twisted sense of humor, and in my case, the truth landed in my lap when I least expected it. It happened on a Wednesday, a day that started out like any other. I got a text from Greg, the same friend who got me the sound gig at the Sky Room. He asked if I could swing by his office after work. He found something of Lily's in the break room and figured I'd want to return it. At first, I assumed it was a scarf or maybe her water bottle, but when I showed up, Greg handed me a sleek tablet still logged into her company email. She must have left it after the party, he said. I figured you could get it back to her faster than I could. I nodded, trying to act casual, but my heart was already thumping. I held onto the device all afternoon, telling myself I'd just drop it off when I got home. But as the hours dragged by, curiosity started eating at me. Would I even be able to unlock it? Was it worth checking? Was I about to become the guy who snoops? But after everything, the lies, the red flags, the way Lily's stories never quite added up, I felt justified, even desperate. I had to know. I had to see it for myself. So that night, while Lily was in the shower, I powered on the tablet. To my shock, there was no password. It opened straight to the photo gallery, probably left from the party. My hands shook as I scrolled, each swipe both terrifying and addictive. At first, it was what you'd expect, *TS of the event space, candid group selfies, plates of food. But buried between the safe, ordinary images, I found a short video. The camera shakes a little and then it's focused on the Sky Room terrace, lit up with city lights. There, in perfect clarity, were Lily and the director. Alone. Not in a group, not laughing with colleagues, just the two of them. In the video, he puts his arm around her waist and she doesn't pull away. They talk close, almost forehead to forehead, and then, right there, in the open, he leans in and kisses her. Not on the cheek. Not friendly. Something electric and unmistakable. She kisses him back. I felt my stomach drop out from under me. I rewatched the clip, hoping I was wrong, that I'd misread something. But there was no way around it. It was Lily. It was the director. And it wasn't just a drunken mistake. This was practiced, careful, familiar. They knew what they were doing. They didn't look scared or surprised, they looked like people who'd done this before. There were more photos, too, her and him, together on the terrace, arms around each other, faces close. In some, she's smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. Not tired, not stressed. Happy. Comfortable. I thought that would be the end of it, but then I noticed the chat icon at the bottom of the screen. Without thinking, I opened it. What I saw left no room for hope. He didn't suspect anything today. Everything as usual, you can come over after dinner. The timestamp was from the night of the party. There were more messages, all from the director's number, all with the same casual, in asterisk mate tone. There was talk of weekends, of cover stories, of the fun they'd had sneaking around. The words didn't just break my heart, they made me realize how thoroughly I'd been lied to, how deep this thing went. I put the tablet down, my hands shaking. I stared at the wall, trying to piece together what I was supposed to do with all this. I didn't feel anger, at least not at first. Just a kind of numbness, like my brain was trying to process something too big to handle in one sitting. There it was, plain as day, the woman I'd built my life with had been living a double life, hiding whole chapters from me. Lily came out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her hair, humming to herself. For a moment, I considered confronting her right then and there. But I didn't. I just handed her the tablet and said Greg found it. She smiled, thanked me, and set it aside, totally unaware of what I now knew. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the evidence in my mind, the way she looked at him, the words in the chat. I didn't have to wonder anymore. There was no maybe left. This wasn't just harmless flirting or a one-time mistake. It was a full-blown affair, planned, deliberate, and hidden right under my nose. I realized in that moment that nothing in our marriage would ever be the same. I could try to pretend, try to forget, but I'd always know the truth. The only question now was what I would do about it. I always thought that if I ever found out my wife was cheating, I'd explode. I pictured shouting, maybe breaking something, demanding explanations in a fit of rage. But when the time actually came, none of that happened. Instead, I felt nothing. Or maybe it was everything all at once, so much that my brain went quiet, retreating to a place where feeling was too dangerous, too exhausting. I sat alone in the kitchen long after Lily had gone to bed, the house silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. The tablet sat in front of me, dark now, but the images and words burned into my mind. I felt like I was on the outside looking in, like this wasn't even my life. But it was, and I had to do something. Just not the something everyone expects. Instead of going to pieces, I went to work. I grabbed a pen and a legal pad, Lily's, ironically, from a conference a year ago, and started making a list. Not of feelings, not of questions, but of facts. I wrote down every odd detail I could remember, every late night, every flimsy excuse. I listed dates, times, locations. I wrote down the director's name, the badge he wore at the party, the VIP wristbands. I listed the exact wording of the chat messages, her expression in the photos, the timestamp on the video. It felt cold, clinical, like prepping evidence for court. Maybe I was. When I was done, I stared at the list, feeling a strange sense of relief. If nothing else, the facts were undeniable. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't made this up. For the first time, the situation felt real enough to touch. I took it a step further. I logged into our shared bank accounts and started changing passwords, nothing drastic, just enough that Lily couldn't move or hide any money without me knowing. It felt petty at first, but then I remembered all those unexplained expenses, the new clothes, the fancy dinners. I wasn't going to let myself get blindsided on that front, too. The next move was harder. I downloaded an app to my phone, one of those call recording things you never think you'll need until you do. I set it to quietly record every call, incoming and outgoing. It felt like something a detective would do, not a husband, but the rules had changed. I couldn't risk being caught off guard again. After that, I remembered Lily's old laptop, the one she thought was dead. She'd stopped using it when she upgraded, but I kept it out of habit and it was still connected to our home Wi-Fi. I fired it up, took a guess at her old password, and sure enough, I was in. The device was slow, but it still auto-synced to her cloud storage. I started digging. Emails, voice messages, random photos. What I found erased any lingering doubts I might have tried to hang on to. There were voice notes from her to the director, little audio messages with lines like, "He doesn't suspect a thing," and "You make me feel alive." There were plans to meet, details about covering their tracks, even a file with a fake calendar entry labeled yoga for nights she'd actually been with him. She'd even joked in one, "If Adam ever finds out, I'm moving to Canada." The worst part was how light and easy she sounded, how far away she was from the woman I'd thought I married. At some point, I stopped feeling hurt. The pain turned to emptiness, and the emptiness quickly became focus. A cold, steady sense of purpose settled in, a feeling I hadn't had in months. I wasn't going to let Lily control the narrative. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. If she wanted a secret life, she could have it. But I was going to be the one holding the cards. The next day, while Lily was still asleep, I opened my laptop and searched for the toughest law firm in the city. Their website greeted me with a line that felt almost written for me. No emotions. Only strategy. I filled out their contact form and attached a few files from the tablet and laptop, enough to get their attention. Within an hour, I got a call back. 40 minutes later, I was sitting in a sleek, glass-walled office across from Marissa, an attorney who looked like she'd seen every kind of betrayal the world could throw at her. She didn't ask for details about my marriage, didn't offer any fake sympathy. She simply scrolled through the evidence, asked a few questions about our finances, the house, and what I wanted to protect. "When you're ready to pull the trigger," she said, her voice even, "just call. Everything else is already prepared." I left her office with a folder full of papers and a new sense of clarity. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was the one making the plan. The chapter Lily had started in secret was ending, but not the way she thought. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning of something new, and this time I was writing the story. That evening, I walked through the front door and hung up my coat like it was any other day. I made a point of being as normal as possible. If Lily noticed anything was different about me, she didn't show it, though maybe she was too wrapped up in her own nerves to notice. She moved around the kitchen, half-heartedly making tea, her motions robotic. She started to talk about work, about how exhausting the office party had been, complaining about the mess, the chaos, the annoying director who kept making everyone take photos. She barely looked at me. I nodded at all the right moments, filing away every new excuse, every detail. Her nervous laughter, the way she tugged at her sleeve, her eyes darting down at the floor. If you didn't know what to look for, you'd think she was just tired. But I could see the strain beneath the surface, the cracks in the story she was fighting to hold together. The next morning, while she slept, I collected everything I'd gathered. *TS of chats, voice memos, the photos from the party, all the evidence meticulously sorted onto a flash drive. I hid one copy in a jacket I never wore, another in a safe deposit box I opened that morning. The last thing I needed was for Lily to sense something and go on a digital cleaning spree. By lunchtime, my plan was set. I printed an anonymous letter, just a brief, emotionless note. I addressed it to the internal compliance office at Lily's company, attached an excerpt from her chat with the director, and included one of the photos of them secluded in the VIP area. I mailed it from a post office across town, no fingerprints, no way for anyone to trace it back to me. Then I went about my day, hiding my anxiety behind a mask of routine. A few days passed in a blur. At home, Lily's behavior changed again. She was quieter, distracted, checking her phone with a kind of nervous urgency I'd never seen before. She started coming home earlier, sometimes pacing the living room as if waiting for something or someone to call. I played my part, cool and polite, never giving her a reason to suspect I knew what was really happening. Then, on a Thursday, I came home to find Lily sitting on the edge of our bed, staring at a cardboard box filled with her things, framed photos, mugs from her desk, a stack of paperwork. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes, and for the first time since this all started, she looked truly afraid. She didn't even try to explain. She just sat there in silence, her hands clutching the sides of the box like it might float her out of the mess she'd created. After a few moments, she swallowed and said, barely above a whisper, "I lost my job. They called me in this morning. No explanation. Just, I'm out. And the director, he's been suspended. Indefinitely." She waited for me to explode, to gloat, or to demand answers. But I didn't. I just nodded, letting the weight of her new reality settle in. For once, she had nothing left to say. There was no speech, no twist, no turning it around on me. For the first time, the roles were reversed. She was the one at a loss, looking for a way out, and I was the one in control. She slept late the next day, barely leaving the bedroom. I watched her move through the house with that same hollow-eyed look, a shadow of the woman I'd married. The phone calls stopped coming. Her friends, the ones she'd always bragged about, the work family she was so devoted to, went silent. Even her parents only called once, and the conversation was short. There was no big argument, no dramatic confession. Just the cold, empty space that follows when someone's world collapses and the only person left to blame is themselves. I realized then that, for Lily, this was the first time she'd ever truly lost control. And the fear in her eyes told me she finally understood what that meant. After she lost her job, the whole apartment changed. Lily started moving quietly, almost like she was afraid of making noise in her own home. She tried to patch things up in her own way, suddenly caring about chores, asking if I wanted coffee, trying to revive old routines. But everything she did felt hollow, like she was play-acting at being my wife, hoping I'd forget what she'd done. She tried to bring back our coziness, offering late breakfasts, mentioning movies we used to watch, suggesting a shopping trip. I went along with it, but only in silence, answering in monosyllables, never really present. Truthfully, I was already gone. On social media, she wiped her life clean, deleting every photo from corporate events, every post with her work family. Even the friends who always took her side stopped calling. The sense of isolation around her was thick, and she started to unravel in small ways. Once, she even tried accusing me of pressure, saying I was cold and distant, even threatening to call the police. But when the officer showed up and read over the chat logs, it was clear who the real victim was. The look on Lily's face as she realized she couldn't spin her story any longer. That was the moment I truly knew she was lost, not just to me, but to herself. I moved out quietly, no drama, just a couple of suitcases and a few boxes. settling into a small, bright studio on the edge of town. The first morning alone, I expected to feel lonely. But instead, there was a strange, quiet relief. The air in the new apartment felt lighter, free of secrets and suspicion. For a while, Lily tried to reach out. Calls, long texts, desperate messages about misunderstandings and second chances. I read them but never responded. The old pain was gone, replaced by something like peace. I started running in the evenings, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected, getting back pieces of myself I thought I'd lost. In the end, I realized freedom wasn't about revenge or proving a point.